Hey class, it's Mr. Chapman. Just wanted to go over lesson one of unit two. Sorry, we're already at unit three, so I take that back. So let me start here real quickly. Just the Missouri Compromise, 1820. This is in response to the Louisiana Territory being opened up. Here you guys can see that when the agreement was made in Congress to try to make sure the balance of power is the same for both the slaveholding states and the abolition states, we'll call them now, but the northern states, that Maine would enter into the Union, and then Missouri would be considered a slave state. And then in this, there would be a line going due west that any new states admitted 3630 would be considered slave. So here I have a additional document that can probably shed some light on the actual line going west. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit bigger on my screen. It looks larger, but just so if you guys can see this, I don't know if it's going to be able to be seen clearly, but I will try to do my best and just make it, there we go, a little bigger. And so you can see that in this 1820, you see this line going out that all these new states coming in would be considered slave, right? And then slavery would be prohibited above that eventually as new states are added into the Union. So let me go back to the lesson. Just wanted to run through a few things for you. And let me go ahead and change the setting here so it's not so big. Let's do that and let's go back to that. Okay. So just real quickly on the slideshow, we're going to go to Missouri from the Missouri Compromise. I do have a video here that I did add. I do highly suggest it. It's only about 2 minutes. I would suggest watching that. So on the slide presentation, I would click that. Definitely worth it. We had a Wilmot Proviso, just a gentleman in Congress who's trying to work out a deal proposed banning slavery from the lands purchased from Mexico. So as we finished the Mexican secession, we took lands from Mexico through war and annexation of Texas. And so here, this debate opens up the slavery issue again. It is not approved and denounced by the South. So basically, in this, Wilmot Proviso proposed any new lands coming in from Mexican secession. And then just real quickly, the Great Triumvirate group of senators that were very powerful, all representing different areas. This was on a previous lesson, but we have John C. Calhoun unmistakably in the center. And so just know that Henry Clay and Daniel Webster representing we'll have Daniel Webster out of the north and then Henry Clay out of the west. And they're all going to represent kind of their sides of the Western territories and states would kind of side with Henry Clay out of Kentucky, and then Daniel Webster out of the New England area. A lot of leadership from him, and then John C. Calhoun out of South Carolina. You can see they chartering the second bank of the United States was a goal, and then they were working towards the tariff of 1816 and to make sure that it benefited the United States. Just going to the next slide, 1850, you guys will see that now we have new territories being formed, and 1850 was a major compromise. Henry Clay helped pass this compromise of 1850, and after its passing, the triumvirate, as you saw in the last pictures, were pretty old, and so they are going to die. No slave trade in D.C., Washington, D.C. If you could imagine, they were on the Capitol steps selling slaves. And so Northern abolitionist Congress members were very upset about this. And so there was an agreement to get rid of that. And then also the Fugitive Slave Act was brought in. We will talk about that on a next slide. California is brought in as a free state, and then here you can see the popular sovereignty. Utah and New Mexico territories will be brought in. Popular sovereignty, the will of the majority of the people, and they would vote. Here we have the Fugitive Slave Act, that the law requires northern states to help recapture the slaves that are in the north. And so you can imagine this does not go over well. Here you have a warning to escape slaves of Boston to make sure that you keep an eye out, a top eye out, and or a sharp out, a lookout for slave catchers. And so this leads us into the next thing that happens. We have Kansas, Nebraska territories ready to become states, and here we have thousands of people moving out to vote on whether Kansas or Nebraska will be a slave or a free state. So here we have Bleeding Kansas, where we have abolitionists fighting pro-slavery forces, and John Brown gets out there and he will be violently attacking pro-slavery people. They say he split heads with his sword, and his sons will come out there and he will do some interactions with slave holders. And so it does get bloody and some writing. I'd have two videos here.
Hi, my name.
Suggest watching either one of those. Okay, so caning is some. We're going to have a senator who is Charles Sumner from Massachusetts, and he speaks out against the expansion of slavery and against Democratic Senators Butler out of South Carolina and Stephen Douglas out of Illinois. And Brooks, South Carolina, hears his cousin Butler getting called out by this Charles Sumner fellow, and so Brooks from South Carolina follows Sumner to an office and beats him with a cane. And you can see the picture here, almost beats him to death. As you can imagine, the repercussions of this, people are now going to bring weapons and maybe even not show up in Congress meetings because of being scared of how people will interact violently, possibly to them. So, as you can imagine, slavery fighting on the out in Kansas, Nebraska, and now we have it in Congress. And Congress members were again upset that that people are moving to just for the vote from the South to try to make it a slave state. So today, real quickly, just tidbit of information. I think it's cool. Jayhawks were out of Topeka, Kansas, were known as the abolitionists, and they were Jayhawk bird is a very talkative bird, and so here we have the Jayhawks are still the mascot of Kansas. And so if you're an abolitionist out in Kansas, you are a Jayhawk. So there you go, some history there for the University of Kansas. Dred Scott decision. So the Supreme Court ruled that Scott had no rights to sue because he was a slave and he was not a citizen. There was a huge story to this, but just cut to the chase, Congress cannot prohibit slavery in the new territories. Uh-oh, what does that mean? It means the other compromises that have been done so far are not really legal. So we got problems. We made these compromises in Congress, and now the Supreme Court saying, yeah, I'm not sure you could limit slavery. So why are you doing that, Congress members? And so if you want to, here's a quick video. If you want to watch it, I highly suggest watching the videos if you want to learn more about what happened. And then I have a video for this one as well, John Brown's raid. But basically, John Brown, the same guy that was out in the Kansas, Nebraska territory wreaking havoc on slaveholders, he is going to attack a sleepy town known as Harper's Ferry, a short train ride from Washington, D.C., just outside of Baltimore, by the way. And if you were to follow the story, he wanted a slave rebellion. He attacks a federal arsenal, which is where they store weapons for the federal government, and the Marines come down and kind of shut it down very quickly. He is hung, and at his hanging, a guy named John Wilkes Booth is at the hanging, and John Wilkes Booth, if you don't know who he is the one that actually kills Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth sees a militia going over to make sure John Brown gets hung, and no Northerners are going to try to free him. And so he borrows a uniform, gets dressed up, and goes over and ensures that John Brown does die by hanging. And so, according to rumors or possibly speculation, John Wilkes Booth was said to have told people this is what every abolitionist deserves. Speaking of John Brown and his death. So just some more pictures of that. In the last couple of things through all of this, we're kind of going to look at the political side of this free soil movement. This is just a group in Congress that was trying to form their own political party, and they were opposing the extension of slavery into the U.S. territories. The slogan "Free soil, free labor, and free men." This group does not get a ton of support or enough, so this group will later form the Republican Party. And all right, so and then just what about the Southern positions? Southerners restrict the expansion of slavery, but believed abolitionists and free soilers were intent on ultimate destruction of slavery. So the Southerners were okay with the restriction of the expansion, just believed that the abolitionists were trying to destroy it, and free soilers. Uh, Lincoln Lincoln is going to run for Congress. He is not going to do well, but Lincoln was not an abolitionist. Instead, he adopted the free soilers position of opposing the extension of slavery into the new U.S. territories. And he did say this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. Douglas against him is a Northern Democrat, and he's going to tell people that popular sovereignty should rule. And Douglas does win the Congress election. So Lincoln, to get some support for president, he is going to join the Republican Party. And just Republican Party, what does it stand for? Northern factories, Midwestern farmers supported this or supported the group. American system. And then this is a lot of the Federalist ideas, just what the Federalists had put in place. And so that's going to wrap us up. I do have this quick video if you want to watch it and just talk about the beginning of the war. I do highly suggest that you do that. I'm not going to play it now, but and so the last thing I want to talk about, make sure you know about the Indian Appropriations Act of 1851, 1871. I did stick it at the end here just to make sure it was covered. I know we did look through a lot of the compromises, but make sure that you have a good understanding that this act allocated funds to move Native American tribes from the West onto reservations or government lands, if you prefer. And this was intended to protect Native Americans from white settlers moving the West. And it restricted the Native Americans' ability to hunt, fish, gather food where they wanted. And a lot of resistance here going on the reservations. We will pick this up in a later unit. And so just be familiar with the Indian Appropriations Act. You will see that coming up. All right. Guys, I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for listening.